Hey, friends, I'm Thea Charles, and you are listening to the Push or Pivot podcast. In this series, we discuss the path someone chooses when they are at a crossroads of their life. Do they push through the adversity, or do they stop, reassess, and pivot? Today, we are talking to Sandi Verhaegen, a mindfulness coach and Reiki practitioner from Franklin, Massachusetts. All right. So I'm super excited to be with you today, Sandi.
Me too. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. So Sandi and I knew each other a while ago through LuLaRoe, I think.
I think so. I think I bought a couple leggings.
Yeah.
Really cute stuff.
Fun things. And then we reconnected at a networking event in Franklin. And through talking, we realized that we were both working in coaching, and she's doing some amazing things. And I just thought, everyone's got to hear about this.
Awesome.
Yes. So Sandi, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am a mother of two. I have been happily married for 14 years. And I just recently started a small company called Zenfully. So that's been keeping me busy, and I'm loving every minute of it and meeting people like you. And yeah, it's been a great time.
Awesome. So tell us, so with this podcast, we talk a lot about when people are at a crossroads and what they end up doing, if they push through the adversity or if they decide that maybe another direction is right for them.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I feel like there's so many crossroads in life, right? So it's not just, there's major ones and then there's small ones all the time. But if I had to pick one to talk about, I think I would go back to the time where I decided that I needed to do something different, that I needed to start living in a way that was more conducive to living a peaceful life and not always so stressed out and on the go.
Yeah.
So this was about 13, almost 14 years ago now. And I felt like I had checked off all the marks, right? Like I had graduated high school, college, and graduate school, had gotten my degree in public policy, and had gotten the big job, was working for Mayor Daley in Chicago, and just always really stressed out, always, feeling like, okay, the next step, I'm going to be happy. The next step, once I get the big job, then I'll be happy.
Yep.
And life doesn't work that way, right? Like we try to accomplish so much. And then when we finally get what we think we want, it's not always what we have envisioned. So at that point in my life, I just, I was again stressed out, and I felt like I needed to do something different. Like I felt like, I could even feel it like in my body. Like I just needed to like do something different. So I had never had any experience with meditation or mindfulness, but something told me that I needed to look into it.
Okay.
So I found a meditation school, which was right around the corner from my apartment. I had never even noticed it. And I walked in. You don't even know they pops up. And so I walked in, like not knowing. I was like, almost like, really? Am I really doing this? Like, so I walked in. Now the studio was like backed up right against the L tracks in Chicago, the elevated train. And so if you're ever in the area, you know that when the train goes by, it's like, and so you're like, what just happened? So it was like that happened every 10 minutes. But despite that, it was the most peaceful place I had been to. It was just like the energy in the room. It's like you just walked in and you're like, and I knew that I needed that in my life. Like that's what I wanted to do. So that I think is where my crossroads is. And, again, do I keep going with like this, my career and all the things that I had been living to accomplish, or do I take a different, do I pivot, right? Do I try to figure out how to live more peacefully and something that's more in tune with what I saw for myself, what I wanted. So in that circumstance, I very much pivoted. So obviously it didn't happen right away. I kept my, I definitely stayed in my job, actually did a little consulting afterwards in the public policy area. And then the more that I started really figuring out what I wanted, I left that behind and I started doing what I knew was right for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really awesome. So when you started to leave everything behind, what was it that you were doing?
You mean as far as the job that I was doing, or what
were you doing with mindfulness?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think at that point when I was just learning about, what it meant to be mindful, I just started listening to myself, and having the courage to say things like, well, even though I have, all these years, I've been living up to, getting the big job that everybody that everybody talked about, right?
Yes.
Having the courage to say that's not really, that's not really what was meant for me. And, having invested, years in my life and the money to go to graduate school, to just be okay with it and be okay with the fact that, that other people might not approve of that. Right. And so having that. So I think that for me, it came down to being in a space where I was allowing myself to be.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. And for those who might not know, can you explain what mindfulness is?
Sure. Yeah. That's a big question. So mindfulness at its core means to be able to live in the present, in the right now, listening and being aware of what's going on internally and externally. So if you're digging a little deeper to make life decisions, you're digging in a little deeper about like, how do I feel about something, right? And why do I feel it's so important to have the big job?
Right.
Is it really that important, or is it that it's been ingrained in me, that's the way it's supposed to be? Like I said before, we all have those check marks that we check off, like graduate high school, check. Graduate college, check. Get married, check. Have 2.5 kids, check. Right, the house, check. And so it comes down to, why do you really want those things? Because it's what's expected of us, or because that's what you really want for yourself? And so in the moment, being able to allow yourself the time to ask those questions and ask them and answer them honestly.
That's awesome. And I even felt that myself when I was leaving my job. There was that whole, like, is this really what I want? I was just kept going and going. And then what's really important to me?
Right.
Is like, takes you a moment to step back and not really think about like what everyone else is thinking and what's really on the inside.
Right.
And that's awesome.
Right. Yeah.
So I know when we had talked before, you mentioned about how you use mindfulness with children. Like how does that come into play?
Sure. So, I will add, when I talk about mindfulness in general, right? It's very few people achieve the ability to be mindful all the time. Even I have been practicing it for a long time. And it's something that at the beginning came in and out of my life, right? Like just like anything ends, when I really needed it, like I felt like, okay, I need to go back to it. And then things start going well, so you back up a little bit, right? And the reason I say that when in talking about kids is because the earlier that you could teach mindfulness, the easier it is to become part of their lives, right? To ingrain, just like you would teach them to brush their teeth, and now they don't even question it, or put their seatbelt on, and when you get into a car, the same thing with mindfulness. The easier or the earlier that you can get to it, the more that they'll be able to do it effortlessly and put it in part of their life, so that it's not an in and out thing. It's just part of their lives. So I started working with kids, actually, my own son.
Okay.
He was diagnosed with ADHD. He is not the only one. Like, ADHD is so prevalent, right? Yes. It's so prevalent. And, you have to ask yourself, like, why? Like, why is this such a prevalent thing in our society? And it has to do, for many factors, but also because it's the way our schooling system is now. It just kind of like puts it in your face that, So I started working with him to be able to teach him strategies to calm himself down, to stay focused, to just be himself, to be comfortable in his own body and surrounding, so that he's better able to deal with the world around him, and what's not just what's expected of him, but be okay with not checking off those marks, and you know, and be settled in the fact that yes, he has to conform to society, but he could still be himself within society. And right. So when I coach kids now, not just my own, I take that approach, right? I take the approach of, okay, these are the things that society confines us to, but how can you stay true to yourself in that situation? And how do you calm yourself down in the middle of, you know, kids with ADHD tend to obviously be more hyper, but also more, what's the word, more emotional. Emotions hit them harder. So, you know, hence why they tend to have more tantrums, and it's when they're younger. And so the ability to catch themselves in that situation and then have the tools to get themselves out of that situation is what I really find so rewarding for me. When a parent tells me, like, he has been having, you know, he was going down the road of having a tantrum, and he actually stopped himself and he calmed himself down. You know, I see it with my own son now, but to have other parents tell me that is just incredible.
It's really incredible.
Or like, you know, my own son will sometimes be like, Mom, I think we better both breathe right now, you know, because he knows something, you know, might upset me, because like I said, sometimes, you know, like even being the mindful mom that I try to be, sometimes as humans, we get something happens and you react because it's that fight or flight, right? But for him my 9-year-old to be able to tell me, Mom, I think we both better breathe right now, you know, knowing what was coming next is huge, because then I know that he's being mindful and taking care of himself emotionally. But to tell me to, you know, to do the same for myself,
that's so special. And that must give him such a good sense of pride too, to be able to know, like, understand yourself in that way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, and like I said, there's still, you know, we're all humans, so there's still, you know, we all have our hard days, but just that ability to be able to understand, you know, to go through a human experience and then relate it back to yet another human, you know, to bring it back to like a calm state of being is that's
really special. Yeah, that's amazing. Anything else you want to share?
So just just in general, So I guess I'll share about what's going on my Facebook page if anybody wants to join in. So you could find me on Facebook, Zenfully, Zenfully. I am doing Mindful March. And so basically, you know, one of the things I kept hearing is like, what is mindfulness? Like, and why do I need to practice it? Like, why do I need to take time out of my busy schedule to be mindful? And so what I'm trying to do with Mindful March is every day a small tip to help you get into a mindful practice yourself. Awesome. So I'm having a lot of fun doing that.
What's the first tip?
So,
give us a little snippet.
All right. Well, the first tip, I'll go back to March 1st. Today's March 4th. So I'll catch you up real quick. March 1st was all about how, you know, what mindfulness is, why we should practice it, and explaining the human response of fight or flight as it relates to stress, and how we're under so much stress all the time. Explaining why, and then also I provide a breathing exercise that you can practice very easily every day. The second day was all about supercharging your gratitude practice. Because gratitude is something that more and more people are practicing, but I provide in there some tips on how to supercharge it, right? To like really make it work for you. Anyway, I won't go through all the 2 other days, but definitely you can find it there. Catch up on the videos. It's a lot of fun.
This is so fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I learned a lot. I'm sure everyone else has. It's just so great to learn about mindfulness. If you could give someone a bit of advice, what would it be?
Slow down and take the time to take care of yourself first. In a society that we are always pushed to achieve and pushed to keep going, and we're so connected all the time, we feel that, hard work is the only way to accomplish what we want to accomplish. When in reality, taking a step back and putting in that hard work, but also the time to take care of yourself is going to achieve even better results for you. It's kind of like in the airplane, like always, you put the mask on first and then help others. It's the same thing. Take care of yourself first and then look to your, what else is going on.
Yeah. That's advice I could have used a couple years ago. I could have used you. And my husband used to tell me all the time, like when I had decided to do LuLaRoe full time, he was like, you need to come up with a schedule where you take time for yourself. Yes. And I was like, no, I want this to be awesome. I'm like, go. And I burnt out. Yeah. And I then, it forced me to take that time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then also listen to listen to what's going on. Sometimes you have plans for yourself that don't plan out the way they do, and that's okay. That's living. Yeah,
this was wonderful. So I'll make sure everyone goes onto Facebook and looks up Zenfully. Sandi has awesome information on there. Check her out. And thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
What did you take away from Sandi's story? How can you listen to yourself and just be? How can you add time to your schedule to take care of yourself? Do you have a story to tell about a crossroad in your life? I'd love to hear it. Contact me on Instagram at pusherpivot or email hello@thearenel.com. That's TheaRenel.com. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and join me next time on the Push or Pivot podcast.